want of a quorum, we will start as a subcommittee. Mr. Bigelow?
Able to recoup a portion of the tax that they are not using. AB 301 remedies this by allowing the buyer and the seller to negotiate the fee as one of the terms of sale. The department would also be required to notify the fee payers through the billing process that they are able to negotiate the fee if they decide to sell their property. AB 301 is revenue neutral and is a straightforward fix for the Californians affected by the state fire tax that are selling their home. I respectfully ask for your aye vote, and thank you.
Mr. Bigelow, do you have any witnesses in support?
I thought I was going to have one, but it looks like there's no one here at this time.
Okay. Well, there we got him.
Oh, they got here.
Good afternoon. Noelle Kramers with the California Farm Bureau in support.
Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Any tweeners with other comments? It is to any subcommittee members who have a question. I will just tell you while we wait, we will not have a quorum to be able to vote on it this moment, but I don't expect this to be controversial. I really appreciate you being willing to look at the amendments at another method to get to what we both want, which is a better situation for the payers of the SRA fee. So appreciate your work on this subject and hope that we can continue, especially because I think the three of us are three of the legislators who have many constituents paying this fee, and so it's a deep interest of the committee.
I thank you for your efforts in making sure that we're going to have the people represented the best they can be.
Great. We will take back up your bill when there is a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
And I see Mr. Patterson here for item 7, AB 335.
Thank you there. I did sign in, I think, fourth in the row. You're calling me second. I would be glad to defer to the other two if they're if they're here.
You are the only author, so it's time.
Then I'll begin. Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for the opportunity to present AB 335. This bill reinstates a common sense minor violation program at the Air Resources Board and local air districts statewide. Businesses in California are subject to hundreds of state regulations with which they must comply. Current law allows state agencies to fine businesses and individuals up to $1,000 for violating regulations, even for minor violations that do not harm the environment or threaten public health and safety and are simply a one-time honest mistake. Imposing penalties on business owners for a minor violation that may be the result of a misunderstanding or a misreading of code seems overly harsh in cases where there was no intent to harm and no intent not to comply. I think it's important to remind ourselves that AB 335 reestablishes the minor violations program at the Air Resources Board and air districts statewide. This program, supported by both Democrats and Republicans, started in 1997 and it sunset in 2006. Under the minor violations program, regulated entities will have a chance to cure or to fix a minor violation when it is first noticed by an inspector, rather than be fined or issued a notice of violation on the spot. These minor violations, and I think this is crucial to understanding the intent and purpose of the bill, must not cause physical harm or endanger public health and safety, and the bill excludes willful or repeated violations to ensure that the grace period would only apply to truly unintentional violations. Similar programs established through legislation authored by both Republicans and Democrats are already in place at the Department of Toxic Substance Control and State Water Resources Control Board. In surveys that were attempting to get a sense of the success of the ARB minor violation program, responded with some very, I think, important and encouraging responses. Over 50% of the participants in that original ARB minor violation program said it resulted in faster compliance, and over 70% said that it resulted in better working relationships between state agencies and businesses. Over 90% of respondents said that this program had no adverse effect on the environment. My office has also reached out to air districts statewide prior to introduction of the bill, and we have worked with them to assess and resolve concerns with the bill. As a result of this outreach, we have amended the original bill to allow air districts with similar programs currently in place to maintain their status quo notice to comply operations. So under AB 335, businesses will have a chance to work cooperatively alongside state agencies, while the committee analyst argues that businesses are only likely to comply with regulations when hefty penalties are in place. This is untrue. Most businesses want to comply with the law, and this bill will not provide them with a free pass to ignore state regulations. I digress for a minute to just let you know that I have come through in my business life and career a highly regulated broadcast environment with the Federal Communications Commission. And over a long period of time of modernizing and improving regulatory involvement with the licensees, we have seen similar kinds of cure or fix-it opportunities arise. And I can testify from personal experience that we are more cooperative, not less cooperative, with the FCC. We find ourselves in a circumstance when there is a notice of a potential overmodulation or spurious signal or whatever the violation might be, that we do have an opportunity to quickly fix it and not be penalized for an oversight. So this bill, in my own personal experience in regulatory environment, and I also think with the experience of the program when it was in place prior, is a bill that encourages cooperation. It creates a regulatory climate where compliance, not fear or not intimidation or not the threat of excessive penalties, is the goal. And I think that given the opportunity to create a fix-it or a reasonable methodology of curing, we actually send a very important signal to those who are regulated that we are interested in them, first of all, being noticed of a potential or possible infraction, but also be given a quick, clear pathway to get that particular matter solved. I think that this encourages participation in the regulatory environment, not a pushback or a free pass, and it also creates, I think, a much, much better working relationship between those who are regulated and the regulators. Joining me in support of this bill are Anthony Sampson of the California Chamber of Commerce and Mike Rogie of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Assemblyman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Anthony Sampson with the California Chamber of Commerce. Pleased to support this bill. The committee analysis appears to suggest that the regulated community may be inclined to evade compliance with the law unless there is a substantial penalty associated with noncompliance. Specifically, the analysis notes as follows, and I quote, "In some regulatory agencies, the risk of enforcement has been described as similar to winning the lottery. Since the chances of being monitored are often slim, the only incentive for complying with the law is the threat of a substantial penalty. To achieve deterrence, the penalty must be sufficient to deprive any economic benefit resulting from a violation, to reflect the seriousness of the violation, taking into account the violator's financial condition, and to deter others from the temptation of noncompliance." End quote. Applying this rationale to AB 335 in response to the passage of the bill's enactment, the regulated community will calculate that the economic benefit of skirting the requirements of the law in their entirety will outweigh the risk of receiving a notice to comply for a violation where an omission is determined by the executive officer to be of such inconsequential amount that it is de minimis. Accordingly, the conclusion to draw from the analysis is that all operations subject to air pollution control laws are bad actors per se because they would strategically and systematically violate the law if this bill were enacted. In my opinion, this conclusion is unsupported. By way of example, a business's decision to systematically commit what they might believe constitutes a, quote, minor violation under this bill carries great risk because air districts may have a much different assessment of the nature of that violation. Under AB 335, a determination as to whether a violation is minor would be left to the discretion of the air districts using the criteria specified in this bill, and thus the bill would not give the regulatory community a bright line rule upon which to make such a calculated decision. With this in mind, the cost of strategically and systematically evading the law for what a business believes is a minor violation is far outweighed by the mere prospect that the air district may disagree. If such disagreement existed, the air district's determination would indeed carry the day, as they are the ultimate arbiter under the bill, thus resulting in what may potentially be rather significant strict liabilities penalties to the operator. This issue notwithstanding, history can inform...
You're going to have to wrap up. The practice of this committee is 2 minutes per witness.
Sure.
You're already well over that.
Sure. And what I was just going to mention is the benefits that were noted, that the Assembly noted in CARB's 1999 report to the legislature, and it would be the Chamber's hope and expectation that reinstating the program would yield similar results. Thank you.
Thank you.
That microphone is not working.
Okay, Mike Rogie with California Manufacturers and Technology Association. I'd just like to reiterate what Anthony has just said and just make the point that levying fines on a business for unintentional violation does not send a message that the state is willing to work with business to encourage acting within the law. I have done a little checking, and I came up with 3 air districts, and this is in a matter of about 30 minutes, that I was able to find actually have provisions for minor violations and the ability to just issue a notice to comply to satisfy that. San Diego, San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District, and the Bay Area. So this isn't that unusual. It was in effect, as Assemblymember Patterson mentioned, up to 2006. We think it only makes sense, and CMTA firmly believes this legislation sends the proper message to businesses considering expansion or moving to the state that we want to work with them. Thank you.
Other witnesses in support?
Thank you.
Mr. Kabatek?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. John Kabatek, the California Executive Director of the National Federation of Independent Business. We serve about 22,000 small and independent businesses in California in strong support of this legislation. We've seen bipartisan support in other areas that are giving small businesses the opportunity to correct and comply. This just makes good sense, and I think we ultimately will see more small businesses complying, and given the fact that they will have this time. So we're in strong support and appreciate your support.
And any other further witnesses, just say your name and your support. Folks in opposition?
Mr. Chairman and members, Brendan Tuig on behalf of the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association. CAPCO is an association of the air pollution control officers from all 35 local air districts. I do want to begin by thanking the author's office for reaching out to us on the bill. We do appreciate that. It started discussions. Unfortunately, we have a fundamental policy disagreement about the need for the bill. Air districts recognize that some violations truly are minor and don't need to include a monetary penalty. In fact, air districts issue thousands of notices to comply annually. Unfortunately, this bill limits the air district's enforcement discretion on how best to address specific violations. It takes a one-size-fits-all approach without considering the very effective locally determined notice to comply policies and rules air districts have in place that works best in addressing their air quality challenges and economic factors that exist in their counties and regions. In doing so, it encroaches on the air district's ability to effectively regulate air industries within their jurisdictions. And further, I'd like to point out that current law already requires numerous factors be considered for violations. Among them, the extent of harm caused by the violation, the nature and persistence of the violation, the length of time over which the violation occurs, the frequency of past violations, and the financial burden to the defendant. Additionally, current law explicitly requires that air district programs be prioritized to ensure that the imposition of penalties is commensurate with the severity of the violation. A couple word on the grandfathering language that's in the bill on page 6, lines 29 to 31. The language only grandfathers in districts that have a program with provisions similar to the bill. So districts will have to modify, some districts may have to modify their programs to match the bill anyway, so it's not truly grandfathering language. And just one more note, Mr. Chairman, if I may, because the report that was brought up, again, that was in 1999. There are yes or no questions, and I would encourage the committee to think about it in a different way. It was early in the program, and as far as the faster compliance times, only 52% said they got faster compliance times. So you could look at it as maybe 48% answered no and either had the same or slower times. And on the public health question, I would submit that 9% of districts saying that they felt it harmed public health is important to look at and think about. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Good afternoon, Chair and members. Tom Addison with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, here to speak in opposition to the bill. But let me just note several things first. We do appreciate that the author reached out to us to ask questions about our program, to seek input, and that certainly is appreciated. And let me also acknowledge that I would actually agree on some of the points made by some of the speakers in support of the bill. Most businesses want to comply with air quality regulations. We have enforcement programs for the minority of businesses who don't, who are not only harming public health, but also putting the vast majority of law-abiding businesses at a competitive disadvantage. My agency has a notice to comply program, yet we're opposed to the bill. Several reasons why. Fundamentally and most importantly, every violation needs to be assessed based on the specifics of that violation. To do so is unfair to all. You have to look at the specific circumstances and find an appropriate remedy for those circumstances. Many of the times, the appropriate remedy is, in fact, a notice to comply with no penalties. And that certainly makes sense many times, which is why we issue literally thousands of notices to comply. But outside of the need to address each violation individually, which you can't if you're defining some categories of violation in advance, because some violations will not be minor that are called that, and some that are minor will not be called that, we think we would immediately, if this bill were to pass, face legal challenge that our existing notice to comply program, which has worked well, would not be similar enough.
Further witnesses in support? By the way, you were excellent in your brevity, 1 minute and 59 seconds. We might get out of here before 7 o'clock if all witnesses were so good. Other witnesses in opposition?
Kyle Jones of Sierra Club, California, in opposition.
Any other witnesses in opposition? Any other witnesses with testimony neither in support nor opposition? To the committee? We have one order of business first. We have to formally call to order, because we were operating as a subcommittee, formally call to order this meeting of the Assembly Natural Resources Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Assemblymember Williams?
Here.
Here. Dolly?
Here.
Here. Garcia? Hadley?
Here.
Hadley here. Harper? McCarty? Here. McCarty here. Rendon? Here. Rendon here. Stone? Here. Stone here. Wood? Here. Wood here. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. There is a motion by Mr. Dolly.
Second.
A second by Mr. Hadley. Other questions from the committee to the author? I think for the issues that have been raised by the opposition, and particularly the officers of the air quality control districts, have pointed out that this bill does not effectively grandfather local districts that already do this. That's one significant flaw of the bill. And so we all say we support local control and we all want local districts to do this of their own accord, and then we're going to impose a sort of statewide way of doing it. I think that is in conflict. Secondly, for the reasons that the representative from the Cal Chamber cited, this is intimately intertwined with what the level of the violations are for large violations. This committee suggested amendments to the author to handle both issues at once, because they are inextricably intertwined if we want to make enforcement work. Those amendments were rejected. And so without the author accepting the amendments that this committee has proposed, the recommendation is a no. Secretary, please call the roll.
Do I get a close?
Oh, you sure do. A brief one.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. You've raised a couple of matters that I do think I would like to respond to quickly. Doesn't this bill decrease the flexibility of local air districts? The answer to that is no. AB 335 allows the ARB and the air districts the ability to classify minor violations as they see fit, as long as certain common sense factors are taken into account when that classification takes place. It allows the districts to have discretion regarding if a violation is minor or if the violation is chronic or the violator is recalcitrant. The bill also allows the ARB or the district to assess a civil penalty in addition to a notice to comply if they determine that one is necessary, accompanied with their written findings. There's been a question raised with respect to whether this is going to, I guess, encourage non-compliance. I don't think that it does. The bill is specifically written to exclude intentional violations, those done for economic benefit, and chronic violations. The notice to comply can only be issued for a first-time violation. So the bill sends a message that the state recognizes that given circumstances and the difficulties that people are faced with a myriad of violations or potential violations, that this is for a first-time violation. And just to make a point with respect to the increase in the fines, with all due respect, I think that the thousands of dollars of fines and the manner in which these fines are determined it is certainly a significant incentive to comply. It isn't necessary, I don't think, to raise the punitive level. We think that the punitive level is sufficiently high. What we believe should be done is to encourage the smaller and minor unintended violations to be dealt with a cure provision, because that, I believe, will send a signal of compliance and cooperation. With that, I ask for your support, and I appreciate the opportunity of presenting the bill to you.
There's been a motion and a second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Assemblymember Williams?
No.
Williams, no. Dolly?
Aye.
Dolly, aye. Garcia? Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Harper? McCarty? McCarty, no. Rendon? Rendon, no. Stone?
No.
Stone, no. Wood? Wood, no. The bill fails. 2 to 5.
For one of enough votes, the bill fails. 2 to 5. Mr. Perea?